Well, we're wanting to be free, to be happy, all of this. So yesterday was, we went to Grand Canyon yesterday, so yesterday was a Grand Canyon day. Kritikaya wasn't able to go, but a group of us went. And a beautiful day. And also yesterday was the Maha Samadhi Day for Swami Shivananda. It's another one of those. Before I had any exposure to Sanskrit, I'd had some exposure to German. And there's something common. I don't know if anyone here speaks German. And somehow it was a natural language for me, so I realized I had spoken German before. But it's like a building block language. In Sanskrit, the same way. We take words which have independent meaning and put them together in Sanskrit in order to bring some new meaning, but including that part of the meaning that was in the original word. So samadhi itself is a made-up word. D is intellect. D is intellect. So samadhi is speaking to a state of constant awareness, unbroken awareness through the intellect, with the support of the intellect. So steady intellect, firm intellect. Sometimes in Bhagavad Gita, when we're dealing with translations, we'll have this concept of firm. Firm means an unshakable intellect, unshakable discernment. Coming to the point where through our own discovery, through our own scientific experiments, through our own research, we've come to see with this discerning capacity that the truth, that I know that truth, that I don't know it through the senses, but I've come to understand it. Right? I can't know that absolute truth through the senses because the senses come from the absolute truth. And the senses are oriented outwards, not inwards. So the senses are always looking away from the truth. So to get to the truth actually requires questions like, dear senses, who is your father, mother? Where did you come from? Right? Dear intellect, where did you come from? And we use the intellect, this power of discernment, this rationating capacity, this conscious mind where we're actually in the moment reflecting, considering, working something out, intellect. So here, this portion of the yoga practice is Vedanta. It's the study of the highest truth. We can say Swadhyaya is a good Sanskrit term as well, which is self-study and study of scripture, study of mantra like this. Using this intellect, this rationating faculty, questioning faculty, to question the very nature of truth, to withdraw from the sensual experiences in its quest to understand the nature of truth. So it comes into this more esoteric place, and it finally discovers a truth which the senses never told it about, which the senses don't have a way of relating to. And so the truth is recognized. It's understood once again, we can say, like that. And that steady state, the firm state, is called samadhi. Samadhi. Sama means steady mind, the intellect. So firm intellect, that's what it means. Completely firm, undisturbed. Nothing could happen here to the one who's in samadhi. Nothing could happen here which would cause disturbance. Paramahansa Yogananda says, the goal of yoga, he says, the yogi must be still in the midst of crashing worlds. So no matter what happens, being undisturbed in the truth, recognizing the truth, being able, of course, to serve as called upon, but not being disturbed by the happenings here. And so we're at that point in the Gita where we're coming to grips with this. We say recognizing our immortality. So samadhi, maha means great. So this term we said yesterday was Swami Shivananda's Mahasamadhi, so the great Samadhi. Now the way that's applied in the traditions, in the yoga traditions, is meaning when the great saint, the great yogi, the one who's in Samadhi, the one who is steady, the one who, through whom the Absolute speaks to us, through whom wisdom speaks. And we know this to be so, but we have to work it out to see it. A couple of nights ago, Tuesday evening, movie night. So the group watched, we've been watching The Chosen. It's this beautiful series based on Jesus' life. And so when I was in India, we do this, we did that. Let's do this. When I was in India, people were showing me these books about Jesus having gone to India. And there's a lot of discussion about that. And I found it interesting. I read one of the books, and there are stories, and there's supposedly places he's being. And the reason that comes is because people recognize that Jesus was teaching the same thing the Buddha was teaching. And so the common notion would be, well, who did he learn it from? He must have learned it from the Buddha. He must have learned it from the disciples of the Buddha. So he must have been in India. So, but in fact, Jesus learned it from the same source that the Buddha learned it from. That's the thing. Which is the same source that Muhammad learned it from, which is the same source that Swami Shivananda learned it from, or any of these masters. There is a reason why they all say the same thing. They say it in different ways, different language, different times. Culturally, it'll have different import, because in a particular time and place, we'll be dealing with something collectively. We'll have collective karma around it. But Swami Shivananda came at a time of the beginning of globalization. And so he taught in English. He taught these universal truths in English. And he was and is a great one. That is, as far as we can tell, Swami Shivananda could do anything. We hear the stories and we meet people that lived with Swami Shivananda through grace. It wasn't that long ago, so it's still possible to know him through his disciples. And I've been able to be, and there's still a few in the body now. He wrote 300 books. How in the world do you write 300 books? On one overarching topic, which is how to be free, how to be happy, but all of these different yogas, there are 50, 60 different specializations within the books that he's written and offered, like this. So we were celebrating while we were at Grand Canyon. I mean, really imbibing it. Swami Shivananda was asked a question before he left the body, and we shared this, and then Nika shared a quote. Nika, if it's handy, could you bring it? We'll share it. So Swami Shivananda was asked before he left the body. The people following him generally knew that he was one with the divine. You could feel it in his presence, and such love for everyone. No apparent disturbance whatsoever. Also very firm in the knowledge of what's right and what's beneficial and like this. And so he was asked what happens when the free one, the Sanskrit term is jivan mukta, when the soul has merged back into the ocean, when the drop has merged back into the ocean. So it's called also self-realization or enlightenment, full enlightenment, full on. Jivan mukti. When the jivan mukti is leaving the body, do they automatically merge with the ocean? Do they automatically merge with the Absolute? See, through grace, Swami Shivananda was in a body. And so here we have those of us that have been touched by him and those who have been with him physically. Amma today is exactly the same as this. And some of us have the opportunity to physically be with Amma. And it's amazing because if we're able to free ourselves of enough of our ideas about, the physical aspect, and the physical aspect being the only truth, then we can recognize we're in the company with pure divinity, in presence of divinity. And so Swami Shivananda very much that way. But then there comes a time, these bodies, they don't last in this formation forever, and then there comes a time where that great soul leaves the body, as it were. And the great soul really was always, this is the teaching, the great soul was really always the ocean. And each individual soul has always been the ocean. The work we're doing really isn't unification of the soul. It's the full-on awareness of who we really are. And that brings about what looks like a reunification. Where this person, the clothing, the mind, the intellect, the prana, the breath, the physicality, where it's brought back, as it were, home, and becomes an instrument of that Absolute instead of something independent, striving to have some independent life, make its own independent way. We call that Samadhi, and then when this great sage leaves the body, we call it Mahasamadhi. So he was asked, what happens? And he answered this way. He said, well, there's a choice. He said, there's a choice to either merge back into the ocean and lose this individualized awareness, and the way to relate to us as individuals. And or he said, it's possible to remain in some way. And so he said, and so I'll be with you. And what we were remarking on and talking about yesterday is just how personal this is. Each of us here and many of the family that are online all have had miraculous experiences. We just engage in sadhana, but confirmations come. All of us have had them. And we can't really take credit for them. We can't even take credit as individuals for sleeping. All we can do is prepare to sleep. And then somehow sleep is a great mystery, and it comes, right? These experiences are the same. We can prepare for them. We can sit very nicely in meditation posture. We can chant our mantra. All of this. These are all activities of the person, of the intellect, of the subconscious mind, of the body. But then somehow through grace, we'll have this experience of something greater, right? Somehow through grace. And we say that grace is Guru's grace. It's Guru's grace. And so the Absolute Guru is within, the Absolute God is within and without. The truth of this universe is the same as the truth of I. There's one truth underlying all of this, me and the universe. All of this stuff is a bit mysterious, but physicists get it as well. Modern physics gets it as well. They don't put the same names on it as we do, but there is an understanding that there's one truth underlying all of this. That consciousness itself, and in particular the subjective consciousness, remains a mystery. That the foundation of the universe remains a singularity, a mystery to objective study. But we know that I came from the same place the universe came from. And so we come to a point where we just had enough of trying to live independently and trying to find this elusive happiness on our own. And we get tired enough of ourselves where we say, there must be more. What is it? And then somehow, and so I would say, for us, then Swami Shivananda steps into the void somehow and says, my dear, it's about time you asked that question. So we relate from an impersonal way, but also from a very personal way, because each sadhaka will be able to chart personal experiences, which are quite mysterious, that help us in our quest, that help guide us and support us in our quest. And we could say, Guru's grace, like that. So what was the other, do you have the quote, Nika Devi, the other related one? This was one of the disciples of Swami Shivananda that lived with him. She was from the West. She took the name, or she was given the name of Swami Radha. Shivananda Radha.
Yeah.
Shivananda.
So she's just remembering his words to her as she's leaving, going back to America. He's said the farewell speech to her, and she's feeling nervous leaving, and she's feeling like crying, and then she says, suddenly there comes a feeling of great peace and stillness. It is as if Guru Dev were sitting here beside me. I remember his words. These are his words. I promise I will be ever with you. If you turn to your right, I will be on your right side. If you turn to your left, I will be on your left. But go ahead, because I will be right in front of you. We have lived and worked together in previous births. Never forget that.
Oh, thank you. So we're extending the day of gratitude just a little bit. We can extend it a lot. So we're just imbibing together yesterday. We had some moments like this, and then we wanted to consciously come back, and especially with our family that join us online, to be able to share a little bit of the experience of Guru. So Guru is also nameless, but somehow each one of us are given an experience coming from the nameless related to some physicality. And so it's quite amazing how it happens, but we're very grateful. It helps us to see that there's more to this life than what we thought. So, okay, we'll pick up there in the Gita and read a little bit more. One of those also remarkable things was Tuesday, but let's, if we have the Gita Dhyanam, I'll make a note to print more today just so that they're all over. Nika, do you have one there? Here.
I have it.
Okay.
Do you? Okay, great. Sorry, Brad.
I know. Not in this book.
Okay. Do you find it?
I found it.
Okay, great. O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us. O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows, the milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna, Arjuna is the calf, people of purified intellect are the drinkers, and the milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. So, Tuesday was our last morning with the Gita, and also we had most Tuesdays and Thursdays we have Upanishad workshop at noon, and we had it on Tuesday, and it was remarkable because, well, I'll just read. So here were the sutras that we read Tuesday morning. Just read them quickly to bring us back. That which is embodied experiences the body's childhood, youth, and old age. He's speaking of the self. And he's just said that the self is immortal. That was number 12. There's never been a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor any of this. And neither will there ever come a time when we cease to be. And he continues teaching in this vein. That which is embodied experiences the body's childhood, youth, and old age, and also in time acquires another body. This does not disturb one whose mind is calm. And we were discussing, sometimes that will get translated as firm. As the senses contact the objects of the senses, feeling of heat and cold, pain and pleasure occur, Arjuna, these sensations come and go, they're impermanent. Therefore, he says, patiently endure them. So that's supporting sama, the calmness of the mind. So he's giving a practice, a yoga practice, which is adapt, adjust, accommodate, bear insult, bear injury, like that, endure them. In fact, that person who's not tossed about by sense experiences and always stays balanced in pain and pleasure is fit to experience immortality. Also yoga practice, great one. So we could say santosha, or contentment. Equanimity. Yeah, absolutely. Equanimity, balanced mind, staying balanced in mind. Well, whatever happens, not tossed about by the sense experiences. You know, our typical experience here, and this is caught up in this web, there's this idea, starting with the fact that all anyone wants is to be happy. But in these psyches, each person will have a different set of ideas and beliefs around what it's going to take to be happy. And as a result, will live their lives without some intervention, will live their lives pursuing their own ideas of where this happiness will be. And it will always have something to do with raga dvesha. Raga is pleasure, dvesha is pain. So it'll have something to do with bringing into this life only pleasurable experiences and avoiding the painful experiences. So there will be this notion in the psyche that this is what it's going to take to be happy. And therefore we have all of these pursuits, right? To experience that which for me is pleasurable. Now it might not be pleasurable for you too, but for me it is. And what's painful for me might not be painful for you. So we'll each have our own individual approach to this. But what will be common is this aversion to pain and a predilection towards pleasure. So it's as if this body is just pulled towards pleasurable experiences and it has an aversion towards painful experiences. But what we come to discover is that these mental states of dullness or tossing, going from one object to another or falling into a place of lethargy, these are exactly what are causing us not to cognize who we are. So we heard a way of dealing with this yesterday from K.C. Gopala on his this one kirtan. The soul in the prison of mind. Soul in the prison of mind, like this. And so when the mind is tossing and not calm and not steady, then it's not possible to see what's here. Calmness is required, steadiness is required. Steadiness is also required in order to act properly. Because if the mind is not steady, then the tendency will be, regardless of what I should do, to do what's pleasurable. Regardless of what I should do, to avoid what's painful. Right? So it will shirk duty, it'll shirk sadhana, for God's sakes. We can say, I need to get up and meditate every morning at 5. And if we listen to the mind, there will be mornings where it says, I do not wish to give up today. So therefore, if we follow it, and that's dvesha, it's, the body's hurting, I've got this pain, that pain, I'm feeling down today, whatever. So, in fact, the person who's not tossed about by sense experiences and always stays balanced in pain and pleasure is fit to experience immortality. What is not has never been, and what is always is. This truth about the real and the unreal has been realized by the seers. Know that all of this vast universe is pervaded by that which is indestructible. No one can destroy what is everlasting and imperishable. The indwelling one is eternal, indestructible, and immeasurable. The bodies of the indwelling one are impermanent. Therefore, Arjuna, this is where we close, whoever thinks that Atman or the self does the killing or can be killed misunderstands. That self does not kill, nor is it ever killed. Different ways of relating to that. But here, we were Tuesday in the Upanishad workshop, and our last sutra. Now, who organizes this stuff? Our last sutra was, if the killer thinks he kills, and if the killed man thinks he is killed, neither of these apprehends aright. The self kills not, nor is it killed. So this is Katha Upanishad, this is Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita it's said to be the milk of the Upanishad. So it does draw the wisdom teachings from the different Upanishads. But that's a pretty important point. And somehow we were given both of them in two separate workshops at the same day as the closing sutra. Does that strike you in some way? Let's talk about it a little bit. We'll take some of the commentary. Let's do this. This is Swami Venkatesananda. Same sutras, same slokas. And Swamiji has added one more. The next sutra is related, of course. It's this. The self, and capital S is what's being used, but it doesn't mean something other than your own self. We can take a moment with this. We deal with what seem like two apparent selves, higher and lower. Both would claim to be I. Both will assert I. But there's something we're wanting to be able to catch here. He says, the self is not born, nor does the self ever die. After having been, the self again does not cease to be. Unborn, eternal, changeless, and ancient, the self is not killed when the body is killed. So that's how Bhagavad Gita follows up this last sutra. That's number 20. And here's Swamiji's commentary. He says, Krishna takes us here to the pinnacle of wisdom, from where we have an indescribably glorious vision of the Absolute, the one that has never undergone a change. The self is unborn. There is no birth and death for the self. And just to touch that again, we were discussing this some on Tuesday, and for movie night, the yogis were inspired to watch, what's the movie?
The
Life After Life.
Oh, Life After Life.
Life After Life. That's the one that was wrong.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Okay. Life After Life, which is Raymond Moody, who'd written a book called Life After Life. He had studied the nature of life, and he talked with thousands of people who had had near-death experiences. So one would surmise that he had had one himself, although I'm not aware of him speaking to that. But somehow this was very important to him, and so it really became his life's work. And of course, the great discovery is there are all these different stories about how we die, and But the people that he was meeting with all had experienced death. Most of them called, the pulse had stopped, all signs of life had withdrawn, all of that. And they would each describe their experience. And then the experiences would be different. In this case, all of them described some sort of a life review, right? But here's the common experience. Common experience is that they died. They were aware of dying or not aware of dying. There are some cases where they were not really aware when it happened, but after it happened, immediately aware again. And aware of whatever. So one would say, I found myself looking down at me on the operating table at the moment that the surgeons called me dead. That would be one of the stories. But the common point of it is that in every single case, if you ever talk with someone who's had a near-death experience, you can ask them, because people are around that have. We had a group on Sunday, and I asked the question, someone put up their hand. If you ask and you confirm, what you'll hear is, I died, but I wasn't dead. So speaking of physical death, bodily death, but the I, the experiential I, never dying. And then, of course, they would describe, perhaps they were given a choice, perhaps they met someone, some very big character, and they might have been given an opportunity to come back, or in this case, he didn't have the choice, he just came back into the body and then continued. So I think in the movie 4 or 5 different people
We didn't end up watching it that night.
Oh, you didn't?
It's not fresh in my mind.
Okay, no worries.
Can I say one thing to add to that? Was how cool it was when they wanted to visit they would immediately think of their relatives or whatever it was, and immediately they'd be there.
Yes.
They would just immediately arrive.
So this is what Swamiji, and this is what Lord Krishna and the Gita are speaking of here. The self is unborn. Self is not other than the I. It's not other than you, the experiencer. All these things are happening to you, right? You can say, I have a company, I go to work, I do this, I do that. The issue is that we're conflating the I with what we're doing. It's very interesting. The first time somebody asks you, who are you? So who are you? Then we'll typically answer with, well, I'm a woman, I'm a man, I'm young, I'm old, I'm a medical worker, I'm a student, whatever. And of course, we don't even know how to answer the question because we've conflated who I am with what I do, with the experiences that I have. So here, Lord Krishna is working to unpack this, to help us to unpack it. To say, I and what I do are 2 different things. And I, knowing this I, is the most important thing there is. I remember hearing people leaving, going someplace to find themselves, and I used to laugh about it. And then some years later I discovered, I get it. So this is what we're dealing with, and so this is the talking to that we're getting. The self is unborn, no birth and no death for the self. Cosmic consciousness, looked at from an individual standpoint, so to say, is Atma, the self, the sky that appears to us through the window as distinct from the sky in itself, which is Brahman. It is the narrowness of our focus that generates worries in us. A broader and deeper outlook will give us a magnificent view of what is and a realization of its changelessness. Cosmic consciousness alone is, even as the sky alone is, undiminished by the clouds or walls that prevents our realization of cosmic consciousness. One more time. Cosmic consciousness alone is, even as the sky alone is undiminished by the clouds or walls that prevent our perception of it. So we can say this, the sky is blue, but today it's not. Okay, we can argue whether the sky is really blue or not. It's not. But the perception is there's a blue sky. Where did it go when it was cloudy? Nowhere. It is avidya or ignorance that prevent our realization of cosmic consciousness. So this mind, but very specifically avidya, or this primal nescience, Maya, as if we've taken a pill. And in the taking of the pill, the clouds came into our experience. And the clouds have been here so long that we take the clouds to be the reality instead of the blue sky, instead of consciousness itself. And how do we experience the clouds? I'm woman, I'm man, I'm this, I'm that.
I'm hungry.
I'm hungry. I'm angry. I'm lonely. These are all experiences of the clouds. They're not experiences of the sky. They're not experiences of consciousness, right? Oh. Ignorance is not a positive factor. It is nothing. So he's sharing here that the problem that we have, what is it that's preventing us from knowing or from recognizing? It's simply ignorance. It's not a thing. It's just ignorance. In the same way that there was a time when I didn't know how to play harmonium, and now I know how to play harmonium. Nothing changed except the ability to sit down and play the keys and not have you run out of the room. So, and the only difference was I was ignorant of it. I didn't know it, and now I know it. This pursuit for self is not really about finding something other than who you are, but it's about imbibing in your own discovery of who you are. How can ignorance, he says ignorance is nothing. How can nothing bring about any change in the reality? How can ignorance affect it either? If we are all in a hall and suddenly the lights go off, it is true that we shall not be able to see one another, but because the darkness descends upon us, we are not crushed, nor are we in any way affected by it. And we are exactly as we were. God alone exists, totally unaffected by the apparent changes in this world and in our body and in our mind. Oh, so this is what we're dealing with. Questions, comments? And look, by the way, it's very interesting because what we also deal with is that there is a factor within you that's under the sway of this ignorance that doesn't actually have an interest in facing the truth. It's a very interesting situation that we're in because we want to be happy, but also there's a factor of force within us that wants to hold on to, at all costs, its own personal particular version of what that will take. And it doesn't, and that factor, we find it when we sit in satsang or in workshop or something like this. My God, I would sit with Swami Premananda, and I wanted to know the truth more than I wanted to know anything else. I didn't care about anything else, but I would sit with him and drowsiness would come. Lethargy would come. The mind would start wandering. It would start going, and I would check in with myself and I'd say, what did he say? And I would realize, I have no idea. I was on Mars when he said it. I was someplace else. So this is the other thing we recognize as sadhakas is that we also have factors at work within us that are caught up in this ignorance. that are not really wanting to play. And so we'll sit for meditation and pain will come. Where's the pain really? It's in the mind, really. Really. I mean, yeah, you stubbed your toe, but where's that pain? It's really in the mind. And then the words might get difficult. The concepts are very, very challenging, and we might find ourselves wanting to pay attention, and the mind wanders. So this too. Swami Premananda had shared, and I had shared earlier, lots of techniques about how to stay present, like this, like not folding the arms, like this, like sitting back straight, all of that. But even then, it took time. So questions or comments about this? It's pretty revolutionary.
So is that kind of where the crossroads of attachment and mumukshupa, or your desire to know the truth, come in? One has to supersede the other?
Well, both will be here. One, this attachment resides in the... So attachment is nothing other than longing for happiness, but expressed through the physical and astral worlds of objects. So with delusion, then the idea will be here that a husband or a wife, a good one, will give me happiness, or my current one is my only chance for happiness. So these are attachments to objects, to relatively unreal, to name and form. Mumukshutva is when it begins to dawn that my happiness cannot be achieved through these names and forms, but can only be achieved through union of the soul, this individual soul, or the I, with that which is higher. The motivation is not really different. The motivation is experienced differently because we're at a tip over point here. We say, yes, I get it, but she just called me a terrible name. And I have to deal with that first. So that's attachment.
But this is how it's going to happen, though, Swami.
And this is the way it's going to happen. So we deal with a lot of attachments, a lot of ideas about what it will take, what are the circumstances. In fact, if you could suspend all of those ideas right now, right this moment, if you could suspend every single one of them, if you could clear yourself completely of any belief whatsoever, and be here right now, having completely and fully cleansed the reactive nature, the subconscious, having completely and fully purified the intellect, being present for what is, fully, completely, with no reactive tendency to run or to come towards something, then you would call that enlightenment. Some other question or comment? Okay. All right. So we'll close.
I
Yes,
just
dear.
add, I found that too. I think everybody has their own comfort level that they're used to, so they don't want to find out, for instance, more information on what's going on in the world,
Yeah.
because it just makes them uncomfortable, so they'll stay at that.
This is, but the world will shake us, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It will shake us up. So it will make us come to grips with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a painful process.
Yeah, it's like working on the gym. You gotta work out that mind, I guess, a little bit if you want to know what's going on. But I guess
It's very hard to live in a world that is completely unpredictable. But the truth is, we live in a world that's completely unpredictable.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great.
So our difficulties can be attributed to this.
Yeah. It's overwhelming.
Because it's difficult for us to accept that it's unpredictable,
Yeah.
completely unpredictable. Right. We have all of these self-defense mechanisms that we've built in order to protect ourselves. And so, and this is Arjuna, this is the story of Arjuna in the first chapter. He's coming face to face with all of these attachments, with all of these relationships. And he's looking at names and forms and their stories attached to every single one of them. And so he's still at the point where the story is more important. And when he's caught up in the story, he's completely forgotten about Krishna being there in the chariot with him. Oh.
He's really got the toughest position I've ever heard of.
What's that?
He's got the toughest position, or the toughest
Everyone here.
circumstance I've
Everyone here. This is a tough gig.
Especially,
It's a tough gig.
It's a tough gig.
Until it's not.
Yeah, we're hoping that this is remembered, because remembering this will help with mumukshutva. It will help with fanning the flames of mumukshutva. I'm not doing this again. Okay, final prayers in our page 80. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Varvairukhameva Bandhanam Mritor Mukshiyamam Mritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Varvairukhameva Bandhanam Mritor Mukshiyamam Mritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Varvairukhameva Bandhanam Mritor Mukshiyamam Mritata Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Shantir Ramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Makarshit Dukhabhagavate Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mritorma Mritangamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnamudashate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and presentations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. Om Bolo Sakura Shivananda Mani ki. Om Bolo Sakura Saraswati Mani ki. Okay, let's rise for our king.